3-minute conversations allowed. Okay, we got 3 minutes, just saying. 3-minute notice, 3-minute warning.
Be sure you get that S in the picture. Either one, either way.
Thirty-second warning. I got 15 seconds. We good? I would like to call the Lincoln Parish School Board meeting into order here Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. I would ask that y'all rise for the invocation by Donna Doss and the pledge led by Mr. George Mack Jr.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today so thankful to be here in this wonderful school and to be members of this board. Lord, lead us as we make decisions. Help us to make decisions that are in the best interest of our children. Wrap your arms around our administrators, our teachers, our faculty, our support staff, and our parents and students. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You should have before you the agenda for today's meeting. Is there any questions or additions to the agenda we need to consider? If not, I'll accept a motion to accept it as presented.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you by Mr. Mitchum.
Second.
Second by Ms. Donna Doss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. You should have also before you have a chance to review the minutes from last meeting of March the 5th. Are there any additions or changes that you'd like to see made before we present those?
Will it make a difference if you did?
Yes, sir.
I don't think so. It hadn't shown it yet.
Any additions? Any changes? If not, I'll accept a motion to present. Thank you, by Mr. Hancock. Second by Ms. Debbie Abram. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
That is approved. Okay. So I would like to thank Lacey Holcomb, the principal of Simsboro, for allowing us to come. Lacey?
Hey, I'd like to welcome everyone to Simsboro today. We're excited to be able to host today's board meeting. Our school has been serving this community since 1888, and we're so proud of our school's history, all of our accomplishments, and we're very excited about what the future holds. We had some seniors give the board members a tour today and share some exciting news about the future with y'all. So we are going to be, thanks to a bond issue that was recently passed, we're going to be expanding and adding on some classrooms, a science lab, and an ag building, and doing some much needed renovations to our gym and our baseball and softball fields. So we're excited about that and the opportunities that it'll bring for our students. And then just really quickly, I wanted to share with y'all our school's mission statement. So it is that we are building a better tomorrow, one student at a time. And that's something that we work toward every day, but we couldn't do it without our amazing faculty and staff here at the school, our district leadership, and then also our school board. So thank you for your support. And again, welcome, and we're glad to have you here today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. All right, Mr. Brandon Sutherland, if you would.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, officially, 3 minutes past. And so I'm excited to be here today. You know, sometimes when you get asked to brag on someone, it's hard to do. But today we have someone with us that is not hard to do at all. This principal here in our district has worked second to none. And she's worked extremely hard at her school. You can see the results when you walk into that school. When it comes to test scores, parent engagement, she does a little bit of everything. And luckily, the state of Louisiana has recognized this too. And here recently, Miss Tiffany Curry at Dubach Elementary has been recognized as a Louisiana State semifinalist for Principal of the Year. Miss Curry, you come on up. I got a nice little plaque here for you. It's all nice and clean. And so we're so excited. We thank you so much. We thank you for all that you do. We're going to take a picture. Okay? How's my hair? Was it good? I want to open it up to the board if you guys have any comments or anything from Mrs. Curry.
Any comments from board members?
I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. She says if she gets it, everybody's going to know what all goes on in Dubach. She said spread the word, and it's being spread anyway. I appreciate you and all you've done. Thank you. You're
Anyone else?
well deserved.
Thank y'all.
Well, Tiffany, on behalf of the board, we are super proud of you. Thank you for all you do. You can just say hi. We're good.
Yeah.
Proud of you.
Awesome. Now, this next group I want to recognize is, once again, some hardworking individuals. You see them, they're kind of the behind-the-scenes group. When you go to games and different events around the school district, you'll see these guys and gals running around and taking some good video and good pictures. This year, the Louisiana School Board Association held a video contest, and they challenged districts across the state to come up with videos that show the community involvement in athletics. And this group took that challenge head on, and what better time to have a video about community and athletics when you have a state championship football team. And so this group brought together some of those videos and clips and put together a fantastic video. If you guys want to see it, I can send you the link to it, so just let me know. But they were recognized by the Louisiana School Board Association for their video, and they won a $1,000 prize, and we're so excited to have them here. and to recognize them for their achievements. This is the Ruston High School Media class, also known as the Bearcat Nation Network. And there's so many of them, I had to get a big check. So y'all all get a piece of this, right? Mr. Brown, yep. There we go. All right, so we're going to hand that to you there. Good. Like my hair? You said I need more hair. Board, once again, I'll open the floor if you guys have any comments or anything.
I'd like to commend Coach Nick Brown and his group of students. It has been an incredible thing to watch evolve at Ruston High School and across the district. I'm fortunate enough that I get to spend a few minutes with some of these kids before football games because they set up one of their cameras right next to where I sit. And it's kind of part of my ritual to visit with them. One of my classmates' daughters is probably my favorite one that I get to visit with, and so it's been an incredible deal to hear people from across the world, whether or not it's people in Dubai or Nashville, Tennessee, or New York City, or a grandmother sitting at home in Ruston to be able to watch football, baseball, basketball, the band, the cheerleaders, whoever it is. So appreciate everything you guys do. I think it has revolutionized the way that Ruston High School athletics will be viewed for many years to come, and I think you guys should be commended. Y'all have laid the groundwork for it, and it's only going to get bigger and better from here, so appreciate all you guys do.
Hear, hear. Anyone else? Nick, thank y'all so much for what you do. You add a tremendous amount of just opportunities for people to see the Bearcats play. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Over 1 million people have viewed it. Over 1.2 million people have watched Bearcat sports since they started. So it's all of them. They get all the credit. They do an excellent job. And really appreciate all the support from the school board allowing us to have this class.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much. Proud of you. All right. Anything else? All right, let's move on to committee report. I'll recognize Mr. George Mack Jr., Chairperson of the Finance Committee, for a report for the Finance Committee.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, ladies and gentlemen of the board and guests, we had on April 3rd our Finance Committee meeting, and there were 2 items for consideration, which are listed here in our agenda. The mid-year health plan changes, which the board committee approved and we present to the board for consideration and final approval. That's the first one. And secondly, the superintendent will speak to the cooperative endeavor agreement with the Lincoln Parish Sheriff's Office. Those were 2 items from the committee for board consideration and possible approval. So let's take item 1 first. Mid-year health plan changes. Ms. Duke, is she here? Mm-hmm. Oh, hey. Would you maybe give us some background additionally? Please, ma'am.
Okay, so just to kind of recap what the recommendation is for the items that are changing for health plan benefits mid-year for the 2024 plan year. First of all, the pharmacy benefits. We are looking to implement the Save On Savings program for specialty drugs. What this is an alternate program that will help to save our members the out-of-pocket cost on the co-pays that they pay for specialty drugs, as well as lower the cost to our plan by utilizing discounts that manufacturers offer on specific specialty drugs on a specific formulary. It would involve promoting the program and getting eligible members who utilize certain specialty drugs to enroll to receive the additional savings. And that, of course, would be, communications will come from Blue Cross Blue Shield out to plan members for that. The savings would be recognized immediately at the point of purchase for of prescription of these certain prescription drugs. The second item is changing chiropractic plan benefits. Currently, right now, coverage of chiropractic services are first dollar coverage as is our wellness benefits. And what this will do is bring it more in line with currently how our regular medical physicians and other therapists, OT, PT, speech therapists, cardiac rehab services are paid, which is that it would be subject to the plan's deductible and co-insurance. And so that is the recommendation there. Currently, right now, the plan allows for up to 20 chiropractic visits per year, and we would also increase that to 24 chiropractic visits per year. In addition to the putting the plan benefits under the deductible and co-insurance. Then the third item is an employee wellness program, because after reviewing the statistics in our plan, we're spending a lot of money on diabetic services for our members. So to try to help combat that, early detection is always the key in trying to detect that and then implement some life-changing some better health habits for all of our members. So we're looking at engaging Ochsner Health to conduct on-site biometric screenings, offer that to our employees on a voluntary basis. Hopefully we can get all that scheduled and worked out in May after testing is completed, where our employees will have the option to do that. They will engage and actually go on site at every school and administrative facility to conduct the screenings at no cost to our current health plan members, and then for the employees, including our part-time employees who want to participate or have a screening, they can do that for a fee as well. So that is the recommendations that were presented to the Finance Committee and approved.
Member discussion? If none, we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee to the full board for the privilege of pleasure of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. So this does come from a recommendation from the committee that we make these changes to our plan. Is there any comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? If not, since it does come from a recommendation, I don't think we need a second for that. Is that correct? Correct. All right. So all in favor of making these changes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, that recommendation will pass. Thank you. Item number 2.
Item number 2, Mr. President, the committee had a chance to hear our superintendent discuss the cooperative endeavor agreement. So I'll defer to the superintendent.
Okay, so we started our cooperative endeavor agreement with the Sheriff's Department back in 2021 after passing the half-cent sales tax in October of 2020 for SRO officers in each school. At that time, we were in the midst of COVID, and we agreed to have one SRO at every school and 2 at Ruston High School, which at the time we agreed to pay $350,000 to the Sheriff's Department every year, make them in 10 equal payments of $35,000 a month. Once we've come out of COVID, the cost and inflation have gone up, and things the cost for the Sheriff's Office, they have asked to increase that to $565,000 a year, which is 50% of what it costs for those SRO officers. We would break that up into 10 payments of $56,500, starting in August, going through May. We think it's reasonable for the services they're providing. We have a great relationship with the Sheriff's Department. We also cover our athletic events, any other events that we have at the school after hours. They don't charge us for that. They do some K-time for that. So I feel like this is in order, and would ask that you approve this increase.
Okay, so again, that was approved by the committee. Is that correct? And so that comes to us. Any comments from the board?
two now at the junior high also, so they added another one.
Okay. Any comments from the audience regarding this matter? Hearing none, and again, it comes from a committee, so it does not require a second. All in favor of approving this request, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, that matter is passed. Thank you very much for that. Okay, is there any other unfinished business before this board that we need to address? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Item number 10, the independent auditor's report. We'll recognize Amy Tynes and Ms. Juanita Duke.
I'm just going to first say that Amy Tynes is our auditor for this last fiscal year audit and for the next fiscal year audit that we'll be undergoing soon. We've kind of worked an extended period of time this year on our audit, and I appreciate the work that Alan Green Williamson and the whole audit team, the work that they've done for this year's audit, and I'll turn it over now to Amy to present the results.
Good afternoon. As Juanita said, my name's Amy Tynes. I'm with Alan Green Williamson CPA firm out of Monroe. And we performed the audit for the fiscal year end of the school board, the financial and the compliance audit. Each of you should have two bound reports. One is our comprehensive annual financial report. That's the bigger report. And then the other one we call our single audit report. I am just going to go over the highlights of last year. This is as of fiscal year 2023 of June 30th. And we'll just hit some highlights of the report. However, I'll show you where my contact information is within the report, and if there are any questions as you go through and look at it further, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. Looking at the annual comprehensive report, which is the bigger one on page 29, this is the independent auditor's report. This is our opinion letter. And we do issue what we call an unmodified opinion, which there are no modifications to the report for the 2023 year for the financial statements. So therefore, it's a clean opinion. But this also has our letterhead. So therefore, if you have any questions, that you think of later, if you have any now, feel free to ask as we go through. But if you have any later, feel free to contact me at any time. But we do issue a clean opinion for the fiscal year 2023. For the financial statements, there are actually two sets of financial statements that we present. One is what we call a full accrual, so we put all the assets like this building, all of them get on the books, as well as all the debt associated with the school board. And then we have our day-to-day financials. They're actually almost like a cash basis. It's called modified accrual, which is the type of financials that Ms. Juanita and her team present to the board on a monthly basis. So the main thing I want to point out on page 54, this is the statement of net position. This statement and the statement on 55 are the two statements presented on a full accrual basis. When we put all the assets and the liabilities on the books, at the end of the day, the net position of the agency is that bottom number is a deficit of $89 million. This is actually better than last year. Last year's deficit was right at $106 million, so that it has improved. The big thing, or the big ticket items that cause this deficit, is our OPEB liability and our net pension liability. So if you actually look at the very middle of that page, you'll see an OPEB liability line of $107 million and the net pension liability of $76 million. And so basically these are two promises that we promise our employees, that if you give me your time and service, we promise to pay your health care until you die, and as well as your pension. And so the health care piece of it, there is no trust set aside for this, so there's no bucket of money set aside in the trust to pay that liability over the life of those employees. So that's why that liability looks much larger. It's the $107 million. The pension, these numbers actually come from the teachers' retirement system and the Louisiana School Employees Retirement System. They do have a trust set aside, however, that the money that they have set aside does not cover the full liability of the various employees in these plans. So after they sort of subtract out what they have aside, Lincoln School Board's piece is the $76 million. So that's the piece that would be paid over the life of those employees that is not set aside in a trust. However, on your day-to-day financials, the modified accrual, these start on page 58. And the main thing I want to point out on the balance sheet on page 58, that first column is the general fund. If you look at 3 lines from the bottom, the $16.7 million is what the general fund has that's unassigned, that it's not restricted or committed for any purpose or specific purpose. This only represents about 3 months of your day-to-day expenses. If something should change with your MFP and other such funding, you have 3 months in unassigned fund balance.
What does the state require?
They actually don't have a requirement. Now, usually what happens is the bonds look at that for your bond ratings. They look at it more. And so they like to at least see a minimum of 15% to start a better bond rating. But there really isn't a requirement. Now, there's a best practice, and usually the best practice is 3 months. Because of just not knowing what happens day to day, or if the state holds money or something happens at the state level, you want to have some to be able to carry you. If you, this is the balance sheet, but if you skip over to page 60 and 61, this is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance. So we'll look at each of the funds here. The general fund's total revenue was $62.3 million. This is an actual increase of about $2.3 million from last year. And the bigger ticket items that increased there was the MFP money, as well as the interest. The interest rates are pretty good right now, so we've earned almost $700,000 in interest this year just in the general fund. The total expenses was $61.2 million. However, this also increased. It increased from last year about $3.6 million. Before any kind of transfers in and out, the general fund actually had a profit, so to speak. We had an increase of $1 million, but if you continue over to the next page, we did have net transfers of $4.2 million. The transfers in mostly are dealing with insurance as well as the indirect cost that comes in for the various federal programs. So because of those, we actually had an additional $4.2 million, so our increase in fund balance for the general fund was $5.3 million. The 2000 ad valorem tax received in $4.5 million in revenue for 2023. This is also an increase of about $300,000 from last year. The big ticket item there was actually the interest as well. The interest increased over $200,000 from what we received in the prior year. Total expenses were $2 million. So before any kind of transfers in and out, they had an increase of $2.5 million in fund balance. But if you look over to page 61, there were transfers out of $1.1 million. So the increase in fund balance was only at $1.3 million. The Title I funds, these are cost reimbursement funds, so it actually does not have a fund balance. We don't get reimbursed unless we have a cost associated with that from the LDOE. Their total revenue received and total expenses with the transfers were right at $5.2 million in Title I. And then the non-major governmental, the main thing here I want to point out on 61, because we're going to look at what makes this up, but overall they actually had an increase of $3.5 million. So therefore the fund balance in all the non-major governmental funds were right at $32.8 million. For the internal service fund, for the high level of the internal service, this is on 64. The school board is self-insured for both the health insurance, as you guys discussed a few minutes ago, and the workers' comp. So this makes up both of those, whereas the workers' comp is only a small piece of it. but they actually, the third line from the bottom, had an increase in net position of 228,000, and then the total ending net position was 3.7 million. That non-major governmental fund, well, before I go there, I do want to point out on page 118 and 119, I'm not going to go over each of these funds, but the general fund actually has multiple funds that make up that general fund column. And you actually have the 67 sales tax, the 79 sales tax, 2020 sales tax, the 93 ad valorem tax, and then your general fund itself. And so this shows sort of how each one of those funds collectively have done over the fiscal year. For the non-major governmental funds, it makes up three types of funds, and this is on page 131. We have what we call our special revenue funds. They're an actual revenue source that comes in for a specific purpose. Usually this is going to be your grant funds, as well as your maintenance funds, those various ad valorem taxes that are received. That's what makes up your special revenue funds. The debt service are those funds set aside specifically to pay debt based on various bond issuance. And then the capital projects funds, and we'll see what makes up those in a minute, but those are funds set aside specifically for capital projects. For instance, we actually had a new one this year for the 2023 Simsboro bond, and so you'll see that in a minute. But that's what makes up these three types of funds. But then if you skip over a few more pages to starting on page 138, this reflects each of those funds that are special revenue funds. So you'll see the very first one listed is the special education programs, school food service, each of the maintenance funds. And so for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but that way you can at least see, in more detail what makes up those special revenues, and then also how good or how well the various district M&O funds did this past year. If you skip over to page 162 and 163, this reflects the various debt service funds. We do have still a few QSCAP funds. Those will be coming up for payment within the next couple of years. So you'll see those QSCAP funds listed, as well as Ruston 1, Simsboro, and Shudrent, those funds. And then for the capital projects funds, those are actually on page 166. We still have some monies left over from the Head Start insurance proceeds. Then you have the parish-wide capital projects, and as I mentioned, the Simsboro bond. One thing here you'll notice that looks a little odd is that they actually had a deficit of $37,000. This is only because the bond did not get sold until after year end, and so this is some of that preliminary cost that was associated with getting that bond passed. And so once the bond is sold, this will clear out for the 2024 year. It'll clear out that deficit. And then, as I mentioned before, the workers' comp the internal service makes up the workers' comp fund and the group health insurance fund. And so you can see how each fund is doing on page 169. But both of those funds actually did have an increase in fund balance for the fiscal year. But out of that $3.7 million in fund balance that we saw earlier, only $390,000 is represented for workers' comp. Before I go over the single audit report, are there any questions on those? All right, if you'll go to the smaller bound report, starting on page 11. This is our schedule of expenditures of federal awards. For the audit, we have to actually evaluate each bucket, so to speak, that the school board received federal dollars in. This reflects each of those programs that were received during the fiscal year, and the total received in federal dollars was a little under $18.9 million. So through our audit process, we evaluate those and have to do various risk analysis to determine what programs need to be audited for the fiscal year. And we're required to present that statement to show the federal government as well. On page 14, this starts our schedule of findings and question costs. And when we perform an audit of the school board, we actually look at multiple things. It's not just financial related. We're required to look at the financials, but we also look at state compliance. We look at internal controls. And we look at federal compliance and internal controls over your federal programs. And so the first part of this is the summary of the auditor's results. So you'll see the financial statement audit. The area here covers the overall internal controls, financial information, as well as the state compliance. As I mentioned before, we issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements as a whole. However, we do have one finding related to the state compliance, and we'll look at that in a minute. But that's one finding related to state compliance. For the federal awards, we tested the child nutrition cluster, we tested the education stabilization funds, and we tested the special education cluster, which includes both preschool and IDEA. And so we did issue a what we call a qualified opinion. We actually had on the child nutrition program, we had 2 findings related to child nutrition. And because of those findings, we had to qualify the opinion because one of those findings was a material weakness. And we'll look at those in detail next. But normally you guys actually have an unmodified opinion. This is probably the first time in many, many years that we've actually had to qualify the opinion over the federal programs. But it's only related to child nutrition. We actually had no findings related to the Education Stabilization Fund or the Special Education Cluster. The first finding begins on page 15. The financial packet or the financial audit was required to be submitted to the legislative auditors by December 31st. We were unable to meet that deadline due to additional timing that the school board needed to finish out some accounts, as well as I mentioned earlier, about the health care, that OPEB liability. You actually the school board hires an actuary to take a snapshot of your employees, and to get that report from them took longer than what was expected. So therefore, we had to request an extension from the legislative auditor, which they granted, but we're still required to required to write it up as a finding, even though they granted the extension.
So did your firm conduct the audit last year?
Yes, ma'am. For the findings related to the federal programs, this starts on page 16. The first finding is related to internal controls and compliance over financial reporting. One of the things that we're required to test is a sample of the claims for reimbursement that the child nutrition program submits to LDOE for reimbursement. The reimbursements are based on the meal count. And a couple of things that we found in this test. One is no one actually reviewed the reports submitted either before or after the submission, so there was lack of internal controls over the submission of those reports. The same person that collected the information, keyed in the information, and submitted the information had no oversight. The other problem that we found out here is that because of the CEP program, you have some schools that you don't have to do applications anymore. All children eat free. However, those schools are not 100% CEP. In other words, they do not have the high level or the level of low-income individuals that attend the school to allow it to be 100% reimbursable by the state. Your reimbursement rate for 23 was actually 86.53%. The problem is when the claims for reimbursement were submitted, They actually submitted the percentage at 83.5%. So they did not use the right percentage. And what that means is instead of getting 100% of the students or the meals, you actually have to take a percentage of that meals, and 86% of the meals you get fully reimbursed by the state. The remainder, you only get a small portion of reimbursed. They actually, assume that they're paid, so to speak. They reimburse you different rates. So because of us not using the same rate, that caused the school board not to claim as much money as what they were entitled to. With this report was that when the meal count, because you have to, each child nutrition or each cafeteria submits the total meals served per day to the central office. Well, when they used the reports being submitted, they did not realize that there was another column of students that they should have included in the total count. And so therefore, you also didn't get the full number of students that you could have received. So it was almost a double whammy on, the cost for reimbursements. So at the end of the day, the school board basically under-requested $20,000 of money that was entitled to them for the meals served and the percentage that should have been used. And because of that and the issues over this report, or over the claims for reimbursement, we had to qualify the opinion and state that the school board met all the other criteria except for the financial reporting section. The second finding is on page, for child nutrition, is 2023-003. And this is dealing with, each federal program has to look at the total dollars being spent with various vendors, and that there has to be a mechanism to ensure that those vendors are not suspended or debarred from receiving federal funds. And so even though we did not find any vendors that were suspended, which is a good thing, there just was not adequate documentation to show that that was being checked for the fiscal year 2023. Any questions on those findings? The other thing I just want to point out, I'm not going to go through each one, but each government is required to have what we call the statewide agreed upon procedures. The legislative auditors sets what these procedures are and requires the auditor to test those. That report starts on page 26. Overall, we did not have really any, we did have a couple minor things that we noted, but nothing significant that would have risen to a level of a finding for the audit. And then starting on page 37, each school board has to have additional procedures that are actually set by BSC, which are agreed upon procedures. And those start on page 37. The biggest issue here, which is really no fault of the school board, we are finding this at every school system, is the schools, LDOE went to a new online platform about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, called EdLink, and it's real-time information, which is great for the user, but they require us to test specific data from that report. And what's happened is, because of it being real time, with them wanting a specific date, it's hard to go back into their system, EdLink system, to say this is what the numbers were at that time. And so even though we didn't find any issues on the school board side, we could not actually reconcile it to EdLink because of the way that their system is. We have actually notified both the legislative auditors and BSC, and I know that they have been working on trying to get where you could specifically put in a date of time and it pulled that date. But at the end of 2023's audit, that had not been completed yet.
So page 26, 1A, tell me a little bit about that. 1I, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Budgeting.
Okay, so each one of these, and let me explain this report, and I should have done that, I apologize. Okay, so The report themselves, like you'll see, and I don't remember what number offhand, but it's in here. You'll see like number 1's written policies and procedures. What you see right underneath each number is specifically what the legislative auditors want us to look at regarding your policies and procedures. Does your policies and procedures, like does your policy on budgeting include information about preparing, adopting, monitoring, and amending the budget? So what happens is, and you'll see we do actually have one comment, but it's on the sexual harassment report. So the A section, all of that is what we specifically looked at for your policies. And then under the comment, so each one of these numbers will have a comment. If we had no problems noted, we'll say no, let's see, no exceptions noted as a result of applying the agreed upon procedures. If we note something, then we'll list it there. So one of the things for the sexual harassment policy, they specifically want us to see, does the policy talk about the annual reporting? It didn't. It didn't mention the annual reporting for the sexual harassment. And so we basically make a note, hey, this, sexual harassment didn't mention anything about the annual reporting. And then really, because a lot of these are best practices, they're not actual law. And so basically it sort of gives the good, bad, and the ugly. So agreed upon procedures are, we say, here's the procedure, here's what we found, and then management and the board determine, okay, do we need to fix it or are we okay with it? And the reason I say that is because like at the schools, when you do collection of monies for fees and things of that nature, they like to see someone who took in the money, a different person recording the money, and a different person bringing it to the bank. A lot of times that's not going to happen because you're limited on your staff. And so we'll say, hey, there's one person collecting, recording, and bringing it to the deposit, but you may actually have mitigating controls that someone later goes and reviews it. So when you go through and you look at these procedures and you look at any comments noted, you sort of almost have to do a cost-benefit analysis, as to when you decide if you want to make a change to what you currently do, because it's, is it, for the money being collected at a school, is it worth the benefit or the cost of hiring 2 new people to do exactly how the state would like for you to do? Does that make sense? So we do have a comment like you'll see when you get to the receipts that we have a comment specifically about the schools on collecting of the money, but we do think there's mitigating controls on that. But yet there's not as many mitigating controls for the disbursements at the schools. And so, but basically as far as the policies, these are what they set to say they want us to look at your policies and procedures to see if they discuss any of this information. I probably gave you more than what you want, more than what your question was.
No,
but
you're saying, but just to sum it up, you're saying A is just best practices. This is not mandates from the state.
Correct. Like this is what they would like, the legislative auditors want to see in your policy, which like your policy covers every one of those areas. We didn't have a problem with that. The only one, when we looked at each one of these areas that they wanted to see if your policy addressed, the only one that had a comment was related to the sexual harassment policy, which is an easy fix because all you have to mention in there is about all you have to mention in there is specifically about the annual reporting that's required. Any other questions? And again, if you have any, as you're going through this, because there's a lot of information in a short amount of time, so as you go through, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to contact me and at any time, and we can discuss it further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions from Ms. Amy? Seeing none, we'll move on to 10.2. Dr. Sheila Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. Federal Uniform Grant Guidance mandates specific policies and procedures for the use of federal funds for services such as printing and binding. And state regulations require that LEAs must invite bids from competitive vendors for services that total $60,000 or more within a fiscal year. And by inviting bids, we're able to ensure that the most economical and efficient vendor is used. About this time last year, the board graciously gave permission for us to invite bids for printing and binding, and we have a contract with Davis Printing, but that contract does expire on April 30th. So we are asking the board for permission to invite bids for printing and binding for kindergarten through 12th grade instructional materials, flyers, forms that the school board uses and that the schools use, and that the board grants us permission to accept the lowest bid meeting specifications as outlined on that invitation to bid.
Okay. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none or hearing none, I would accept a motion that we approve that as requested.
Make a motion.
Thank you. Donna Doss. Second by, was it Mr. Hancock? That works. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Hearing none, that'll pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's go to personnel reports. Dr. Lewis?
Yes, Mr. President, for April, I'd like to report 4 faculty retirements, 5 faculty resignations, and 1 faculty recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Duke, if you want to cover the next 3 items?
I will. We have the sales tax report for the month of March. Collections for the month of March is down 6.4% compared to this month last year. Overall, we are still, on a cash basis, we are, collections are about 0.75 of a percent lower than we were this time last year. If you remove that refund that we did in July, we actually would be up about almost 2% in actual collections over the previous year. For the financial report for the month of February, we have total general fund collections for revenues of $47.7 million, total expenditures of $30.1. I'm sorry, special revenue funds, revenues of $30.1, total revenues collected of $77.8 million. This is approximately $10.7 million more than last month's revenue report, mainly because of another collection of our Avalon property tax collections that we received in the month of February of about $7 million. So that increased that amount. Year-to-date expenditures in the general fund, $35.1 million. Total expenditures in the special revenue funds of $21.3 for total expenses so far of $56.5 million. Overall, total fund balance in the overall for all funds is $65.9 million. Of that, in the general fund, we have $40.3 million, with $28.7 million of that being undesignated, which is approximately 46.9% of budgeted operating expenses. Mainly that increase due to the ad valorem tax collections that we received in February as well. Overall, special revenue funds total and general fund reserve fund balances is about $37.1 million. Okay, moving on to the health insurance report for the month of February. Total collections as far as interest income and premiums paid by the school board and members are about the same as they were year-to-date compared to last year. Total monthly collections of $1.2 million. Overall, year-to-date, $2.4. Total plan expenses for the first 2 months of the plan year is right at $27.2 million compared to $2 million. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. $2.7 million total for the first 2 months of the year total expenses compared to last year of 2.2 million. We are actually have an increase in our overall operating expenses for the first 2 months of the year compared to last year of about $436,000. Overall, we have decreased our net assets of about right at $300,000 for the plan year in 2024.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any comments or questions from board members? Hearing none. Mr. Durrett, enrollment update.
Okay, so should have in your portfolio there, enrollment update. All schools are above 90%. Of course, A. Phillips is the highest at 96, or really Howard School is at 100. And then there's all of those there.
Thank you for that. All right, go ahead with your report.
Okay, so just a couple things. We're in full testing right now at all of our schools, all the way from kindergarten all the way to high school. Should finish all of our testing in the early May to mid-May. Plenty of time for end of school. It's a long process. There's a lot goes into it. Dr. Hearn takes care of that, and we certainly appreciate all that she does and our testing coordinators at every school. Just a reminder, the bond election in the Shudrick District and the Ruston School District is April 27th, and early voting is April 13th through the 20th. And that's in the Ruston and Shudrick District. And then, of course, the Simsboro bond passed last year, and construction will begin at the end of May, right about the time school starts out here. We'll go through the next year and should be completed for August of the start of school 2025. So looking forward to getting all of that started out here.
Good. Thank you for that. Any other comments or reports from board members?
I have a request. Seemed to be every town hall meeting you had, they asked the same question about this Jump Start program. And I think it would be good if you would elaborate and let these people know about this program. There's a rumor going around saying that a kid that in this Jump Start program can go to college, yeah, junior college. No university or four-year university accepting them. So that rumor needs to be shut down. It's not happening. You know what I mean? The education of every child in this system is important. They are our future. And if we don't prepare them, yeah, you're going to be like your governor. You're going to be running around here trying to put them in jail when you didn't educate them. So we need to look at this Jump Start and get it going where every child is college material. You can't make a child say that they not college material. So if they fizzles out in the 8th grade, that means K through 8 failed them. Look at the issue. If we don't go back and find out what's causing these problems, we can't address the issue. You can't make up as we go. You know, every kid, if you want to see, just look in the streets walking. Kids don't want to come to school. That's not our problem, but those that's there, we should take care of them and educate them. You know, I still look at a principal is a teacher, a parent, everybody. But if you have that attitude that, hey, make it on your own, nobody's going to be successful unless it's given to you in your hand, you know. But this Jump Start seems to be an issue. As far as I've heard about it, it's not good for nothing and nobody. Let's go back K through 8 and find out where the problem is. And then my other issue is, who is anybody to decide my educational path? Now, if we're going to have kids failing reading and be put back, then we better get ahead of the reading program. That's all I say is prepare these kids for the future. Athletics is all in well, but when it becomes cut and dry, all of them not going to be professional athletes. They're going to have to depend on that education to make it. So, you know, being an old coach, I know. But don't feed them a bunch of bull when it's not happening. I'm impressed every time one graduates and go to college. Let that be the issue. And I've asked for information more than once. I haven't received my information. So I'm like Jekyll. What you got to hide? I'm through.
Thank you, sir.
I want to echo what Mr. Ferguson is saying. Next month, I'm requesting, I will hold an executive meeting to discuss this because this is unethical for us to make a comment and say that students who graduate with Jump Start, that they can attend a 4-year college. We can't do that. We can't tell parents can't show up to admissions and say, and it's been reported to me that parents have cried about it because they were told that we are telling them that they can be admitted in a 4-year college. That's not true. So we got to get this straight. And second thing I do want to bring up is the state championship team. Is 2 sides of it. Have we narrowed down the date of when we taking the students and support groups down to the state capitol?
I'm not sure. I was out of town Thursday and Friday, so I think they were working on that.
Mr. Young, have we narrowed down the date?
I think we're still working on it. May 8th was probably the best date, but that was his football team only.
Okay. And so have we, are we waiting on Coach Ball or Chris Turner, or who we waiting on?
My understanding, we were waiting on both of our legislatures and Coach Ball and testing to figure out when the best time was for them to all go.
And normally I don't speak on people's behalf, but Rasheed Young is waiting. So between Chris Turner and Coach Ball, we need to decide a date so we can take the support group and the football team down there to give them an opportunity. Also, I want to mention to the board that in the community that our judge, Bruce Hampton, is using his own money. He purchased a poster and he got it framed, and so he plans to put it in the lobby of the courthouse for our state championship team. So that's very exciting.
Thank you. Okay, I would remind everybody that tonight, speaking of the bond issue, 6 o'clock at Ruston Junior High cafeteria will be the third and final of our public meetings, in case anybody wants to come, and also let the public know that is going on. If they have questions that they want to address about the bond issue, we certainly encourage them to come. Do I have any other business to address? If not, I will accept the motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Any second? All in favor say aye. We are adjourned.